Let me tell you a little bit about my guest today. David boasts an impressive career spanning over 35 years, during which he has excelled in managing and leading organizations. His expertise extends to serving on both national and international boards, building formidable teams, honing his personal leadership skills, overseeing financial matters, and nurturing visionary leadership. Dave's passion lies in the development of leaders, as he possesses a deep understanding of what it takes to build and scale a business successfully. With his extensive management experience, he approaches his clients' challenges with dedication and offers valuable guidance to help them navigate the complexities of business growth. Those of you seeking insights into leadership, business scaling, and effective management can undoubtedly benefit from Dave's wealth of experience and commitment to leadership development. So, Dave, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Candy. It's good to be with you today.
Welcome to Biz Help for You, the show that saves you the expensive learning curve by providing advice from industry experts in every facet of the entrepreneurial journey. Too many small businesses collapse. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 20% fail within their first year, and less than 35% make it to their 10th anniversary. The goal of this podcast is to change that statistic. So if you're interested in learning more to be a successful entrepreneur, tune in today.
I'm happy to have you here. I'm looking forward to this discussion. But before I get into any questions I have on the topic, I'd love for you just to share your story of how you became involved with leadership development.
Well, really, it's interesting because really all of my life I've been involved in leadership from the time that I was leading nonprofits. I've also done a lot in private education. I think I've been a head of school of 5 different schools, an executive director of a state group with 37 schools in it. So I've just always, and it's kind of just how I'm wired in the sense that I have just discovered that, if I can grow as a leader and develop, and if I can help others who work with me or alongside of me or for me to grow as leaders, I call it the pebble in the pond concept. When you can help the leader grow, it's like throwing a pebble in a pond. There's a ripple effect. And everybody in that organization benefits from that leader's growth and development. So it's just kind of my passion and the way I'm wired, and I just love helping people develop and grow personally.
Perfect. Well, there are so many things that come about when you are a leader and you want to develop leaders even in your own company. So, if we're talking to someone today who's thinking about scaling their company too, like what are some of the challenges that they may be facing when it comes to scaling, and how can they be implementing their leadership to effectively manage that?
Well, I think it all starts actually with the leader, as ironic as that sounds. Here's what I find with most small to mid-sized business owners. They are what I call player coaches. I don't know if you grew up playing any sports, but I'll just take baseball. So they're like the starting shortstop on the baseball team, and they are the coach, and they're doing both jobs simultaneously. So they have, a major role within the company, but then they're coaching everyone else or developing everyone else. And you can do that. I mean, it's possible to do that. And really, when you start out, you kind of have to do that. But eventually, they kind of add a hat, then they add a hat, then they add another hat, and pretty soon they have a lot of hats. In fact, it's interesting. Sometimes when I begin with a new client, I will ask, "Hey, do you have an organizational chart?" Some people do, some people don't. So either way, if they don't, I say, "Well, look, I want you to create one, and I want you to put your name on that chart everywhere where you're involved." And I've had people come back to me and said, "Wow, I never realized all that I'm doing." And I've even had someone come back and say, "Now I know why I'm so exhausted all the time." Because I didn't know, but you kind of just add a little here, a little there, and then eventually you get to the point where you're kind of like this. You're kind of tapped out. You're maxed out. Okay, and the company cannot grow anymore because for the company to grow, it means you have to take on more, and you can't take on any more than what you're currently doing. So if that's happening, that's a pretty good indication you need to kind of, I'll call it restructure so that you can grow. Because if everything falls or depends upon you and everything, you've got to touch everything, you're going to eventually become the ceiling of your organization. And you can't add anymore because you can't handle anymore. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
a good sign that you need to kind of make some adjustments.
Right. Well, and we know too with growth, a lot of times it's taking more resources to get to that growth, where scaling, you're hopefully, having that exponential growth is a word, I guess, but not appropriate necessarily, because growth and scaling are different. But, your revenue continues to increase without having to put so much more into it too. So can you really talk about maybe how the entrepreneur can look at that, and do they really want to grow or do they want to scale, and how could they figure out how to do that properly?
Sure. I think it's kind of starts with the owner once again. Here's what I find. Look, every owner, I'll say everyone does something really well. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But none of us do everything really well.
Right.
And so I always start with the owner, because I try to get the owner to understand what his or her strengths are. Now, you might say, well, certainly they understand that. But honestly, I find sometimes they don't.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what happens with our strengths. We tend to think, anybody could do that. And the reason why we think that way is because it's natural to us. It's kind of how we're
Mm-hmm.
wired, how we're gifted. And so for us, it's not work. I mean, it's just easy. I mean, hey, I could do that in my sleep, we think. Okay. But the truth is, it's kind of your secret sauce. And
Mm-hmm.
and it's what you do really, really well. But here's what I find with a lot of business owners. They tend to take on areas of weakness rather than stay in their strengths. I'll give you an
Mm-hmm.
example. I had a friend of mine who still owns a small computer service company, maybe a half dozen employees or so. And when I first started talking to him, I said, well, tell me a little bit about your business. I said, you kind of have business development or sales, and you have operations, which one are you? He says, oh, I'm sales. Without any question, I'm sales. And I said, well, tell me about it. And he went on to say, look, I'm not trying to brag. He says, but if I get before people, I close like 80% of everybody I talk to. I said, wow, 80% close ratio. I'm impressed. That's a high ratio. I said, what about the operational side? He said, nah, not my thing. He says, I'm terrible. I hate it. I'm horrible at it. So I said, all right, be honest right now in your company. What amount of time, energy, and focus are you giving towards sales versus operations? To my surprise, he said, I'm 85% operations and 15% sales. And I'm like, whoa, you kill it in sales and you hate operations and you're doing 85% operations? So I just paused. I said, well, how's that working for you? Literally, his head drops. He says, it's not. Right now, I hate my life. Every day is a stress pot to me. It's about all I can do to get up and make myself do what I need to do. And I'm just exhausted. So I said, well, what would happen if we could find someone who could run the operations, or at least 80% of the operations? You'll probably still have to do 20% because you're the owner, but you can handle 20%. We got you out of operations and back into sales. I said, how would that change your company? He paused for a minute and he says, if I did that, he said, I'd double my company in 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
Long story made short, he found his operation person. He got back into sales. He got into some government contracts and his company just took off. And so sometimes the key is really positioning yourself as the owner in your strengths so that you're doing what you should be doing 80% of the time. And then what we do from there is try to help you build what I call a complementary dream team.
Mm-hmm.
And I say it this way, believe it or not, there are actually people that love doing what you hate doing, and they're really good at it. And you need to find those people. Sometimes you already have them on your team, and you just need to allocate them differently. Sometimes you need to go out and find them. But people think that what happens is you start to grow and then you structure to be able to handle the growth. A much better way to do it is you anticipate that growth, you plan on that growth, you strategize for that growth, and you actually structure in advance so that when the growth comes, you can handle it and you're not overwhelmed by it. And it's a little bit counterintuitive to what a lot of people think.
Right. Obviously, that's one of the key factors, is really looking at who should be doing what, who has, the certain strengths, and what are we still doing with, our job that is a weakness that we could hand off. But there are other elements, obviously, of, having a successful company and planning for that growth and scalability. So can you talk about maybe some of the other elements that they should be considering when they are planning for this additional growth?
Yeah. I think one of the keys is not only getting, first of all, in the right space as the owner. Secondly, beginning to add, and you do this gradually, it's not all overnight. You add a key person, maybe who takes a sizable load off of you in an area initially. And then eventually, and I actually encourage people to work toward having 3 to 5 people, or what we would call direct reports. And I say it this way, frankly, if you're really, really good, you can have 5. Most of us aren't that good, so I suggest you aim or start with 3. And they're going to take over major, I'll say, aspects of the business. Maybe it's marketing or sales, maybe it's deliverables, maybe it's customer service. It can be, whatever areas that you want to delegate to them. But here's the real key. It's not just getting the right people on your team, but it's actually developing those people. What I find is, we work pretty hard to hire the right people or try to get the right people on our team. And then we kind of expect them to develop themselves, and they will to a certain extent, but eventually they're going to kind of cap out. They're going to rise to a certain level and they're going to flatline. As an owner, I don't want them to flatline. I want to lean into them, and I want to help them to continue to grow, to improve, so that they do their area with a high level of expertise. Now, sometimes that means I do the training and I help them develop. Sometimes maybe I don't even have the expertise to do that training. I might hire someone or get some online training that they could go through that would help them develop, or hire a coach for them or whatever. But the idea is I'm investing in them. But the reason I'm investing in them is because I want them to grow and develop as a key employee. And when you do that, what happens is everything begins to rise. Everything begins to move forward, because you're actually investing in the people that are going to help you gain additional income. They're going to help you grow your company, that are going to take a tremendous load off of you so that you're not so stressed out all the time trying to handle everything yourself.
Well, so many people start a business and start with just themselves often, and then over time they're adding staff, but they've never really even had leadership training, so they don't even know how to do these things that you're talking about, finding the right fit for the positions, putting them with the right strengths and things like that too. So do you have any tips for someone who maybe they're going to be making a soon to be hired, and it's going to be a first staff member, or maybe someone who currently has staff, but maybe they're not doing everything to their core strengths? Like, what do you have to share?
Yeah, I think one of the things is really getting clarity about the role of that person. You'd be surprised how many people, they may have a written job description, but it typically tends to be what I call a laundry list, just a list of tasks that they're responsible for. And that's okay. But you're looking for more than that. You're wanting skill set, you're wanting aptitude, frankly, you're wanting good cultural fit. Maybe work ethic might be another thing that you're concerned about. But the idea is that it's more than just filling a role. You're really wanting someone that can come in and carry the load and help move things forward. And so getting something in writing where you're really looking at a good, solid understanding of the person you're trying to hire, is basic as that is, you'd be amazed how many people don't do that. I always say often we hire from our gut. And what I mean by that is we find someone we like who doesn't quite fit what we want, but we like them and we kind of connect with them. And so we kind of shape the job to fit the person rather than finding the person to fit the job. And it usually doesn't work out very well because it's just not a good fit for that person. So I think the clarity piece is a good one to start. And it takes time to do that. And then as you begin to go out and look, whether you do, use sites to look, or you ask friends, you tell them about someone you're looking for, or you network or whatever, but you want to really make sure you're dialed in and you know exactly what you're looking for. So that way you've got a good target in mind and you're really hiring well right from the beginning.
Right.
A second thing for me right after that, as soon as you find the person, if you don't have, you want to develop what I would call a good onboarding process. Most companies don't have much of that. A lot of corporations don't have much of that. Frankly, here's your computer, there's your desk, here's the company manual. I hope you make it. It's almost that minimal at times. But what you want to do is you want to roll out the red carpet of that person. You spend a lot of energy and time and money to find that person. You want that person to feel special right away. And so you want to bring that person in and demonstrate value and appreciation that he or she is joining your team. And you also want to help that person gain the understanding or the clarity that they need to have to be able to succeed in their job. I always say this, in every job you have, there are about 3 to 5 things that you need to do well in order to succeed in that job. Most of the time, employees are expected to figure it out for themselves. And that's not fun. And frankly, it's painful.
Right.
I'll give you an example. I had a gal that I was coaching, and she kind of got a different. I was working with her in one area, but she had another assignment given to her. It was a pretty sizable. It was in education. It was a pretty sizable responsibility. And I said to her one day, I said, this other role that you have, I said, what exactly are you, do you need to do in that job to be successful? And she kind of started laughing, and she said, honestly, I don't know. And I said, really? I said, well, have you talked to the person to whom you report? And she said, I have. And she doesn't know either. It was a new role. And I said, well, look, why don't you figure out what are your 3 to 5 things you need to do? I want you to map it out on paper. And then I want you to map out what, the subpoints of what you need to do to succeed in those roles. And then take it to your boss and see what she thinks, let her shape it a little bit. And she did that. And it was like, wonderful for her because it actually clarified what she needed to be working on. When she showed it to her boss loved it because now they had direction. They had a roadmap. A lot of people in work don't have a roadmap, and they will literally spend 3 months, 6 months, 18 months trying to figure out, what do I really need to do in this job to be successful? And until they figure that out, they're just kind of, doing stuff, but it's not necessarily the important stuff. So I think that's also really key as you try to grow and develop people and build your team.
Well, I think now too, with onboarding, that has become somewhat difficult with a lot of the work from home now, where, everyone used to kind of be together, and now people are working remotely, and some of them aren't even in the same state any longer. So having that like side by side, sitting with me, let's go over this information, let me train you, let's welcome you, with the crowd. So what can you say to someone who's in that situation where, they're not in an office together any longer, and they're bringing someone on, they want to make them feel special, they want to give them all of that training that they need, but we're not even in the same room? How would you handle that?
I really don't see it a lot differently from what we're doing right now. I mean, we can have a conversation. All my clients are remote clients. I don't have anyone local. So I'm having conversations with people sometimes all over the world, and, it's really about investing yourself in that person. Okay. I'll say it this way. Often when someone joins an organization, a company, it's what I call a win-lose situation. The company wins, the employee loses. That's not a very good place to be in. Nobody likes to be in that position. You want to make it a win-win. The idea is, as an employer, I want to lean in. I want to get to know you. I want to understand not only your aptitude, but even your interest. Sometimes you will hire someone in one role, and as you get to know that person, you find out, what, she really fits better over here, because she's got a lot of aptitude. Maybe she hasn't had the experience, but she really is interested in developing and growing in this area. And I need someone in that area. And so it allows you to sort of reallocate them to a different position, one that fits them better, one that they really have more motivation for. But you're not going to know that if you don't lean in. And really what I encourage employers to do is make it a win-win, because here's what happens. When the employee wins, the company wins. If you make it all about the company, the employee has no motivation, and often as an employee, you're like, okay, I'm killing myself, but I'm not really seeing much here for me. So I'm starting to look around and begin thinking about where can I go, where it's going to be a better environment. But if I have someone who's really investing in me and helping me grow and develop, and I sense that commitment and that genuineness in doing so, all of a sudden there's a principle of reciprocity that kicks in. As an employee, I really want to help the company succeed because I sense the value of what this owner is doing in investing in me and helping me grow as an employee. And I think that makes a huge difference in any company.
Perfect. So if someone is still thinking like, okay, I do want to scale, I have so much I have to figure out, and I really don't know what I should be doing and how to appropriately do that, like, what is the advice you would give to them to help them start on that journey?
Well, every company is different. Some have more resources, some have less resources. I mean, there's a lot of variables in all of that. And, if you're not comfortable, I mean, I think one of the things you can do is get someone who's kind of helped scale companies or grow organizations before, kind of like as a guide. That person's not going to do the work for you, but I always say it this way, frankly, when I talk to clients, I say, look, I don't know everything, but I can tell you some things not to do because I tried that and it didn't work,
Hmm.
um, but it's a joy for me, as a coach, like an executive coach, to be able to come alongside of people. I often say I function a lot like what I would call a non-equity strategic partner, in
Hmm.
that I don't have any equity in the company, but I function like a partner. And I usually
Hmm.
say, look, you got to talk to someone. You can't just talk to anyone. And let's be honest, your spouse is tired of hearing about it, you know, uh, because you bring all that stuff home and it's like,
Hmm.
oh yeah, it just feels like you're droning on and on and on. But it's nice to have someone that can really just kind of get in the ditch with you, or in the boat with you and help you navigate the waters that are coming. And it's also good to have someone to bounce things off of who's, I'll say, more objective,
Hmm.
because sometimes the hardest thing is everything's just so close to you. It's so personal. It's hard to be objective because you're just so engaged personally, and having that kind of person can really help you to be able to move forward and avoid some of those mistakes, and
Hmm.
have some insights and some strategy and some things like that. But you need a strategy and you need a plan. Now, what's the difference? A strategy is kind of the big picture, oversight of, okay, I'm here, I'm going here. Okay, so how am I going to get from here to here? The plan is when you break the strategy down into more bite-sized, achievable steps. And you can even tie it to time, from this quarter we're going to do this, and next quarter we're going to do this, and next quarter we're going to do this. You can structure all of that out so you can see a way for this to be achievable. It
Hmm.
doesn't feel so big and overwhelming because you've broken it down into bite-sized achievable steps.
Hmm. Sure. Well, and nowadays there's so much technology available too, like to help us. So would you, touch on maybe some of the technology or automation that can help streamline operations to help them with their scaling?
Well, once again, it comes down to some of your business. I mean, there's a lot of things you can automate, um,
Hmm.
but I find that, frankly, if you get the right people in place, you
Hmm.
know, and they have competencies. As an owner, I don't have to know everything. I don't have to know everything that's out there. I can bring people on my team who are knowledgeable in certain areas. And a lot of leaders, if they're honest, they're not always wild about having people that know more than what they know. And I,
Hmm.
I never have quite understood that. I've always used to tell my team members, I said, look, I hope there's some things that I don't know, because otherwise there's really no need for you to be here.
Right.
I want to hire competent people who excel way beyond what I do in areas like technology and other areas, and let them do the research, let them make the recommendations. And depending on what line of business you're in, it can be something in marketing, it can be something in sales. I mean, there's all kinds of ways you can use technology nowadays. And I know there's a lot with AI right now, and where people are doing all kinds of things with AI, some of which are not so good and some of which I think can be very
Hmm.
helpful. But I go back to getting the right people on the team and then
Right.
letting them actually help grow that division or that department that they're over,
Hmm.
rather than me feel like I've got to drive everything, I've got to do
Right.
everything, I've got to direct everything.
Hmm. So if they're looking, and saying, well, I have staff right now too, and I'm sure that they have some of the skills that I need. I just, don't know how to easily identify what those skills really are. If they have the strengths that I need, like, what would you say about how to, like, maybe analyze the staff that they have now, that maybe they're doing a different type of job than they really would excel at. Like you said, they had a role that they were hired into with a laundry list of things, but maybe there's some other skills that maybe they haven't even identified yet. Like, what would you say to them to help them identify some of those characteristics?
I actually use some assessments that I've used for years. One of them is DISC. You're probably familiar with DISC. I find that to be very helpful in a variety of areas. One of the areas, and this is just an example, is when you understand the different DISC profiles, I always say you don't lead everybody the same way. Usually what happens is when people come into an organization, whoever the alpha is in the organization, and whatever his or her profile is, sets the tone for the whole organization. If you're a high D, for example, if you're familiar with DISC, you're kind of a driven person and driven personality, get it done. Okay. And if you have just one style of leadership, that will work really well if everybody in your organization is like you, which is never the case. Okay.
Right.
I think a difference between a one-dimensional leader and a multi-dimensional leader is that a good leader learns how to lead different people differently. So I think of it like when I lead an I lead in one way, and when I lead a D, I lead in a different way. I adjust my style to fit the people that I'm leading rather than forcing them to adjust to my style in the way that I lead. And I find that to be much more effective. It can help with communication. It also can help with job placement. For example, if you're familiar with DISC, if you're a high C, you're kind of a quality control person, very conscientious, kind of an I dotter, T crosser, loves research, very analytical. Okay. You don't want to put a person like that in a high people-facing kind of role where, they have to be very intuitive and really connect with people, because they're not typically going to be high connectors. They're more the behind-the-scenes people. So understanding their personality can be helpful. One other assessment I use is called UMAP, YOUMAP. So if you want to look it up, it's MYYOUMAP.com. A friend of mine developed this assessment. It's a holistic assessment that looks at 4 different areas. It looks at your strengths, and it uses strength finders for that. If you're familiar with strength finders, I found that to be very, very helpful. I won't go all into it, but it's just very, very, very insightful, very helpful. It looks at your values. That's something that most assessments often don't look at. Those are things that are important to you, but they're not. It doesn't have to be moral or ethical. It's just what's important to you. For example, for me, one of my values is quality. So if I'm involved in something and it's just kind of being thrown together and shipped out the door and, just not done well, I'm out. I just don't want to be involved in things that really don't, are not high quality. I find it even affects how I shop. I don't buy a lot of stuff, but when I buy stuff, I research it and I try to get good quality things because I want it to last. And I'm willing to pay a little bit more because I want it to last. The third area it looks at is skills. And it divides those between what you call energizing skills and draining skills. Often we learn how to do a lot of things and we get pretty good at it. But if it's a draining skill to us, at the end of the day, we're exhausted. If it's an energizing skill, at the end of the day, we're excited, we're ready to go. Okay. So learning what really energizes you and what drains you often can help with placement. And the last one, it looks more at your personality and just kind of how you're wired and kind of your passion. So it's more of a holistic assessment. And I find between these 2 different assessments, a lot of times I can help people, know where people fit best. And I have a current client that I just helped him reposition a gal in his company, and she has actually she was over in sales and marketing, which she did well with. But when I talked to her, I said, I don't know if you've ever thought about it or not, but I think you would enjoy operations much better than where you are. And she said, what do you mean? And I explained it to her. She said, I'd love to do that. That would just fit me to a T. And he actually took my recommendation, repositioned her, and now she's over all of his operations, which, by the way, has taken off about 50% of his load as the owner. He's really excited about that. And now we're working on some other things, some other people that we want to develop within this company.
Perfect. Well, I know we're coming to the end of the time we have together, so I'd love to ask if you have an offer you would like to share with our listeners, and how can they connect with you?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways you can connect. If you just want to reach out, sometimes, if you don't know much about me, you're probably not ready to do that. So probably the best place to start is my website. My website is PennCoaching, PENN coaching.com. If you go to the resources page, there are a number of ebooks there that you can download that kind of help you with business or leadership. So you can just, if you want to get a little bit more acquainted. If you say, hey, I'd like to talk to you more, what I encourage you to do, if you go to the website, you can schedule a consulting call. There's no charge for it. It's not a high pressure call. Basically, it's a conversation. I meet with people. I try to learn a little bit about their company and their business, some of their struggles. If I think I can help them, I'll say, here's what I think would help you. We could talk about working together. If I don't think it's a good fit, sometimes I know someone else that might be a better fit. I'm glad to refer them to someone else that could help them. Or sometimes we just don't feel like it works, and that's fine too. So it's not no big, pressure sales call, but it's a conversation that I think can often bring insights and understanding in the company. And so I like to make them high value when I talk with people. And they can schedule that on my website, or if they just want to email me, my email is Dave, DAVE, at PennCoaching, PENN coaching.com. And I'm glad to just let me know how you found out about me. I was on Candy's podcast, and I'll be glad to connect with you and schedule a time where we can get together.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Dave, for being a guest on my show. I really appreciate it, and I enjoyed this discussion.
Well, good.
And to the listener, if you enjoyed today's topic and you want to hear additional information, you can find access to the exclusive content in the show notes. Thank you for tuning in today. Would you please share this episode with those you know and leave a review on your favorite platform? And if you find our show informative, would you consider being a financial sponsor to help me continue my mission to educate business owners? A link is located in the episode description, and no amount is too small. I'd really appreciate your support. If you are interested in connecting with our guest and receiving the offer they had to share, a link to our resource page is in the show notes. Finally, if you have any bookkeeping or payroll needs, reach out to us at 310-534-5577 or contact@abandp.com. My team and I are eager to assist you. Until next time, have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Biz Help for You. Please join your host, Candy Messer, again next time. Have a terrific day.